And I think this does have something of an input to what happened with the family. There was if you want to call it an entity, some people would say that it was that, or a demon, or a conjecture of the minds of the people there. But I do tend to think that when these things happen, it is a spirit of, well, it ties itself to individuals or things or places. And can they move about? Yes and no. And sometimes spirits are acclimated to one area and just hang out there. A house is built, there they are. And then we know that these principalities or powers or darkness that would be described in high places come to interact with humanity. They do occasionally. And sometimes they call them part of a possession of the person when he totally takes their mind. Or it takes their mind and overrides them and begins to act through that body that it has taken. Other times it is like this. They like maybe to stir up actions and see where it goes. And in this case, whether this entity or spirit or demon had anything to do with this, no one can say definitely, oh, that was there, that happened. But they did know of the weakness of men and women and the fact that they are not trustful. And if you interject ideas and things to bring distrust, it can then expand based on the individual. If they're not trusting and they're not caring and not loving, it can grow. And it starts small, and it's a slowly expanding event, in my opinion. And hello, I'm Walter Bradley, and I'm here with Greg Fernandez. And we're talking about the Crowley family. And my input on this from the dealing with the paranormal entity is that it had an effect on this to some extent. Did it cause it, or did it cause the family to be done in this way? No, technically it did not do that. It was the action of David Crowley, maybe? Could it have been? There's questions. But in either case, the family that was killed and died was due to the actions of people, not a spirit. And wouldn't you agree with that, Greg?
Yes, because a spirit can't necessarily kill somebody. They can force somebody to kill themselves.
Right, and
but
they can.
These demons, I should call them.
And they use the thoughts, as I told you before. They use the frequency. They can put thoughts in the head that are not the natural person's thoughts, but due to them dealing with the dark and opening a door to listening, they then interject darts or thoughts in the minds of people in the very voice of the person they're speaking about, and making them to understand or think the thought is theirs. I don't know if you believe that, but I believe those kinds of things can happen. And I've been challenged with that sometimes, with a thought that says, do this, ooh. And I'm thinking my own thoughts. It's kind of like my voice. Everybody recognizes the voice in their own mind, so to speak. And they kind of go, wow. And we hear that voice in our mind. And that may sound crazy, but it's true. And everybody that does it knows it. So these things input those. But it's a seed. That's all it is. It is a seed. And if that seed takes root, you got a problem. Because it then begins influencing other thoughts and creating thoughts from ourselves, which are apart from the entity that just planted the seed. The entity isn't thinking these thoughts. He may encourage them, but he's not doing it. What is doing it is the natural man's soil and heart that are taking that seed and watering it, if you hear what I'm saying.
Dropping out?
Yeah, you were dropping out to where the words were fading as you were speaking.
Oh, great. Oh, that's the demons right there.
Right when
That's
you
all
were
that is.
expecting to speak that. So let me ask you to do this. Say that again.
Yeah, sure.
At least from our end, I was going, what? Well, it is interesting. The moment I was about to get online, the power blew up.
That was very creepy, yeah.
And I was going, okay. It's not for today, Father. Gotcha. Well,
exactly.
there's interference coming, and we need to avoid that. Okay.
Yes, I was just trying to say that if your guard is down, if your spiritual guard goes down,
by drugs,
things,
it could be drugs.
Yes,
or
by drugs. Yes, it could be anything. That is real, and I do believe that could play a part. I don't believe that played a part in this case because when they came out with the toxicology report, there was nothing weird in there. There was no drugs. There was nothing like that found. But the whole theory, even of this demon, even talking about it, it's something that you can never really prove. There's no way that cops or anybody are ever really going to prove that it was a demon that might have taken over somebody's body or maybe a physical presence that killed all three of them. But it's going to be almost impossible to prove. What I find interesting is that this story was supposed to be in Eric Nelson's documentary A Gray State, and it was taken out because it made David's wife look crazy. And there are certain people that are trying to make this into a pact theory that David and his wife had a pact to kill themselves and kill their 5-year-old daughter. And the evidence is just not there. It's not there for that. It's not even there for David. They can't put the gun in David's hand. They claim David wrote 3 notes in 3 separate rooms. One was written in blood, in his wife's blood. Now, there's also the only other satanic, well, there's a few other satanic things in there too, I guess, but they had a Bohemian Grove statue. The Bohemian Grove Owl statue was in David's house.
Ah,
I found that on. He's on his way. This trailer back in 2012 does really good. It's creating a lot of buzz. Up until his death, he was working on making this into a feature film first. Then they were going to turn it into a TV series. So the final goal was to turn this into a TV show. And they were working towards that up until David died.
Well, that's interesting. So, it goes back to the bamboozle issue.
Yes, it's very similar to the Philip Marshall case.
and I was just thinking, yeah, I'm familiar with that case. We've talked about it. And I looked at that, and at that time I played devil's advocate. I was saying, is it really what we think, or is it as it looks? But as I say, nothing is as it appears. And you have to find the facts to see if it's really true. And one of the things that really, when somebody wants to get away with something, they have to do 2 things. It's either 1 or 2. It's an accident or it's a suicide. It has to be engineered to work well in those 2 things. If they do it well enough, it can be a quote, unquote, open and shut case. And one of the things with David Crowley that's interesting is why kill? There's with a murder, and why would there be a pact between the 2? I want to know. Why would David and his wife Comel want to kill their daughter in a pact?
Now, they, as far as this presence, where that happened was at a different place, so it didn't happen at the same place they were killed.
That's key, because generally there are entities that follow families, which is considered like a generational thing. Whether they're always active, I don't think that's true.
At the very end, he was in line with a project that was budgeted for $30 million. So this project was budgeted for $30 million that they were still working on. Everything was still in progress. Yes. But David had two other people helped him with this, and he had to get those 2 other people to sign off on it, to sign away their rights. One of them did, who was a soldier, a family friend that grew up with David Crowley. The other one didn't. It's hard for me to think If there was a presence in this house, if there was something that followed them there, it's hard for me to think that it's not involved in this case somehow.
Well, it could have been, but like I say, because spirits can kill. Spirits can kill. They're real. They can, dependent on the amount of investiture the person has put into it, spirits can appear and appear as somebody or something, like this dark entity in the corner that the daughter was seeing, and then the mother. Did David ever see it? He was aware of it and was praying, so I assume he was a Christian.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that too, because there's been questions of, was he a Christian? Was he not a Christian? Was he, kind of just a wavering Christian? But whatever he did, if this story is true, it just proves that how powerful the power of prayer is, and that's the only thing that really worked. Was to say prayers. Do you have any idea what prayers he might have said, or maybe he was just reading random scriptures? I don't know.
It said he did some scripture reading in the room where the appearance was, and there's several scriptures that you can use. I don't know what his particular focus was, but it would have been those in which maybe the Savior would be present in the scripture, how he commanded them. And he may have said in the name of Jesus. He may have used that. But he had to be careful. As you know me, even my niece, and I'm not going to mention her name, has had dark entities with red eyes. I speak to her in counsel. She was wanting me to come down there. There are physical altercations with these entities. They attack and pinch and hit. And I've talked with her with the counsel that I've given her, and it's decreased. And the counsel is always going with the word, pray to the Father first, and then ask for the words to say, and then go in there not to confront them, but to just send them away. And that you do not want them to play here. You understand that they are people. They think just like you. They hear, they understand, perceive. And we must sit there not consign them to hell. They know where they're going already. All you do is speak the command that we don't want you here. And to deal with anything that might invite them in, stress of unbelief, anger, contention, like the whisperings in Carmel stirred up what? She woke up and was angry at David. These are the things that often opportunities opened for evil to step in. Anger is a tool and a dart of the devil to divide. Now, David and his wife were found together in the same room, I take it then, as I looked at this.
Yeah, all three of them were, and David was found without his right hand. Camille was found without both of her hands, and the 5-year-old daughter was found without her whole right arm.
Oh, David didn't do that.
They were all shot. They were all shot. The wife was shot twice, front to back, left to right. The daughter was shot in the back of her ear, her right ear, and David, his whole head is gone.
So they blew it off.
They blew it off. So just the very back part of the skull was the only thing left.
That's not a suicide.
Now they have a family dog. They had a family dog that they pretty much, the police and everybody, they're blaming the dog for the missing arms, for the missing hands, for the missing brain, for the missing heads. They're blaming the dog for all of that stuff.
That's possible. That's possible. And really, it makes it very easy to say. But did they find the arms? Was there any detritus? No. Because the dog would have been passing waste, they could have investigated and known whether that occurred fairly easily. And this doesn't sound like a murder-suicide to me.
No, it doesn't.
And there was notes, though, you said, one written in blood.
Okay, so 3 of them, right? So we have 3 notes written in 3
and that
separate
last
places.
note was typed out.
And the last note was typed out, and it said, "I have loved you all with all of my heart." None of these notes are signed. None of it can be proven of who actually wrote it. But within 24 hours, they're already treating this as a double murder-suicide. But it gets even worse. They do not have the bullet. They leave that house with 6 bullet casings and 4 bullets.
But they lost 2.
They weren't even looking for 2. One of the other 2 rolls out of the carpet when the cleaners are cleaning up 1 day later, 2 days later. That bullet will be the bullet that they'll try to tie to the daughter. Then, check this out. 1 month later, they have to go back into the house and find the other bullet. There's a bullet hole in the living room ceiling leading to a bullet that they're going to try to tie to David. But they didn't see it. How could you miss a bullet? You've been in the house 2-3 times. There's no way that you miss a bullet hole in a crime scene right above your head. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
It seems like a lot of police agencies make a lot of mistakes when it comes to these
That's a big
crimes.
One.
And
yeah, that's a big one.
They come to quick conclusions in some of them. And it leads me to think, just like a lot of disappearances or bad endings in national forests or things, it seems that there's no answers to what really happened. And
Right.
in police work, this is more true than you see on television. In fact, anything you see on television is fantasy. Has nothing to do with the world we live in. That's how I look at TV. And police work especially. What you see is real is on the police cams and the police cameras that you see out there, sometimes just quick decisions that are wrong and some right. And with the David Crowley issue, this sounds like it could have been a murder made to look suicide, possibly. The thing that's curious is the time of death of each of the people. Was David the first to die? No, they seem to assume he was the last to die, based on what I see, because they assume or deduce that he killed him and killed himself. But his head was blown off. And so that says that he was shot in the head, and that was coming from behind, correct?
No, I think it would have been coming from in front of him, since
okay, so
they did the back of his skull.
So he shot himself in the forehead, not in the temple?
The exit wound was on the left side of his skull.
Oh, so he did. It would be a temple shot then.
Right. Now,
okay.
David was actually right-handed. He was right-handed. His right hand was not there. The gun was found next to his left hand, very close to his left hand.
That doesn't make sense if a right-hander. Now, could the dog have, done something?
Moved the gun. They were there for 3 weeks.
Even if the dog would have eaten the hand, as they deduced in this case, they say, this doesn't add up too easily. And it seems like with Philip Marshall and them, they're always working on something, and with a $30 million budget and going forward with it, what would be the gain of killing David and his family? Why not just David, in a sense? If there was a murder here, why the whole family, unless it was only made to look like a murder-suicide? And what issues were the family having to lead to this? He didn't seem like an unstable person, maybe. I don't know. Based on me reading things after that I had seen about the interview that you had done with the one friend, is that there was not a lot of animosity in the household or a lot of stress. And generally a murder-suicide has some precedents that show up before this occurs. If there's
right.
any
And
sort of
those,
issue.
yeah, and those were talking points. So those were big talking points when this happened. Those were some of the major talking points. Well, they were having problems. They were fighting. She was going to leave him. They didn't have any money. They didn't have money. All of that turned out to not be true. So it gets even worse.
So they were expanding that to make it look like those were causes, but they were not.
Yes, they were not.
So that illustrates further that it might not have been really a murder-suicide, especially with the gun where they found it. That doesn't make sense. And the fact, and they couldn't take the gun, because if you kill somebody with the gun and want to make it look like a murder-suicide, you leave the gun there. But the prints weren't there. And did they have any prints? He was a former military, right?
Yes, he was.
His prints would be on record.
Mm-hmm.
And
correct.
that would be something to compare to the gun. But you said there was not any prints really on the gun that they found.
They did find a palm print, but they could not conclusively tie it to David. So they couldn't say that this was David's palm print. And, we're talking about 3 weeks with a gun that was probably lying in blood, with a dog that is tearing up the whole living room. Even if it's not eating the bodies, it's tearing other things up, pillows, things like that. So even if you add all of that in, it's like, why would anybody jump to the conclusion that, well, it must be David? And their final conclusion is that since they couldn't prove that it was anybody else, it has to be David.
And
that's their final conclusion. Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's inconclusive is really what they should say. And that opens the door that it was murder.
Yes.
But that's the problem. They don't want to deal with that.
Why not? I mean, why wouldn't they? Wouldn't they want to solve the problem? Wouldn't all the good police want to actually figure out what happened here, solve it? I mean, we're talking about a 5-year-old child here. This is a serious thing, and I just can't believe how they treated this case, knowing that there was a 5-year-old child involved. It should have been treated a lot with just a lot of more care. That's the way that I see it. And I'm not a cop. I don't know what they do. I had no training, nothing like that. I'm just totally looking at this from, outside. But it just seems like, man, if this was my family, I would want to know what the heck happened here. What went on?
And the reality is, I don't think they finished the work on this. I think it's still really an open type case that deserves scrutiny. Because of the gun location, one. Because if he did shoot himself with the right hand, the gun could not end up at the left side of the body unless he had used his left hand. Possible. Just because you're right-handed doesn't mean you won't use your left hand, but it's highly unlikely. You usually will go with something more comfortable if you're doing the shooting. I can shoot with left or right. I'm left-handed, but I shoot with my right hand. So, but I can shoot with my left too. In that. The thing is, in these things, the fact that they had an entity presence, I don't think bears much on this case. A lot of people have these types of incidents, poltergeists, if you want to call them, or evil entities. They do exist. They do exert their presence at times. And I don't know, it could deal with the fact, and it's possible, but we don't have anything definitive because we don't know all he knew, all he was dealing with, the family members, the friends, and they were in this house for a year. Generally, they start with the spouse and work out with the friends, and were there any situations that he was involved in, especially with this movie, that may have brought this demise or murder. As I look at it, I look at it as more of a murder at this point than a suicide, because not all the evidence is pointing to a suicide. it's pointing to suicide murder. And the bullet hole in the wall means somebody was running or moving, and that bullet didn't hit its mark, or did it? They say it went. That bullet in the ceiling was attributed to who?
It was to David. Now, they didn't find blood on that bullet, but they found David's DNA, but not his blood. So,
well, there would have been blood with that. I mean, if it goes through blood and brain tissue, you're going to have some blood on it.
Well, then they only have 4 bullets, and yet they have 6 casings. It doesn't add up.
Well, then there's 2 bullets that are missing. That's what.
Well,
if
they were missing.
6 shots off,
they found them. They did find those bullets.
Yeah, right. You did say one rolled out, and the one was in the ceiling was the 2 extra.
Yeah, the one in the ceiling was the one that they found
and the one
1 month later.
Okay. So they found all 6 bullets.
They ended up finding all 6 bullets, but they had to go into the house 3 times within the span of a whole month.
Here's a question then.
And the only reason that they went into the house that 3rd time was because they were told about that bullet in the ceiling, or else they would have never known, and the police would have never gone back there and found that bullet. It would have never happened.
How many members of the family were there? You had David,
this is a huge family,
his wife, and his daughter. If he was going to kill his daughter and his wife and himself, he would only need 3 bullets. If he did it with, how did his wife die? She was shot where?
She was shot twice. She was shot on the side, and I believe she was shot in the back of the head, if I remember correctly. I have it here.
This sounds like there was movement of the family, and that's why that bullet, it suggests maybe that they were scrambling. I don't, if somebody comes at me with a gun, I'm dodging it. I'm trying to get away from them if I can't defend myself or I'm too far away. Don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And there were several of the police reports talk about how they couldn't find any proof that anybody forced their way into this house. They're very clear to mention that, but they never talk about it. Just once or twice. It's only mentioned that the back door to this house was unlocked, and it was open 1/4 of an inch, but it was still open. And it's like, so why are you guys talking about anyone forcing their way into this house when there's an open door? It shouldn't even be a question. It shouldn't even be mentioned.
Well, the thing is, if you can pick a lock, you can make it look like it's unforced. That's easy. If you get lock picking, you can pick a lock. It doesn't take that. Or if you're somebody that is acquainted with them, you can actually unlock a door and set it up if you're going to do something like a killing. Like this, and make it look like a suicide, but it doesn't have the earmarks of a suicide.
No.
Suicide, no. You've got 3 people to kill. The husband would know how to kill his wife without, shooting her in the side, unless he was flipping out and crazy, and he doesn't sound like that, or that this happened. It sounds like there was somebody there handling the gun, but they were all aware, and I don't know if he subdued David first and then killed him in front of him and then shot him, which it could be that is a thing that comes to mind. And, he's tying up David, his wife comes in, oops, shoot her, got her in the side, oops, blow her head off, oops, the kid's going, catch her behind the ear, boom, dead. I don't know.
But why take the why take off the hands? You know what I mean? Why that? And why is it on all 3 of them?
Well,
I don't know.
In some cultures in the Middle East and they would cut off the hands and feet
as punishment.
After kill them, cut off hands, feet, and kill them.
But there must have been certain things that they did that for, right? Like if you violated this or if you did that. Are we talking about?
And maybe that's what this is being done, and it ties into the Middle East again with Allah Akbar. And so it's pointing that somebody could possibly have not a Muslim angle that could be there, put there to distract from the real perpetrator of this crime.
Right.
Someone would use Allahu Akbar because, one, right now, Muslims are highly noticed, and it's a news element quite often. And as you notice, it's kind of fading out, though. The war and all of that is fading. And anybody that puts Allahu Akbar on it and, praise Allah and giving homage to Allah is either that was a distraction to mislead police, or it's a Muslim. But a Muslim, why would he kill this family? As a tribute to Allah, they would claim it. Even, I did this. I did it to bring praise to Allah. They generally want to praise it. They'll give it a group name or something and hide behind it, maybe. But I seem to think that would be a distraction, not a reality. And did he know any Muslims? For a Muslim to take action, he would have to have offended one pretty seriously for him to come in and kill the family and then put that. That would be an action they took to, and is he in a Muslim predominant area? And the New World Order has been programmed by the UN to be going forward in about 12 years, I've heard. Whether that's true or not. But I've noticed in several things they're in groups of 12 years. We want to have global warming in control. Seems to tie together, I think. And I think the Agenda 21, those are not going to get met, and the UN is going to step in to say, we're going to do it to get it met. Along with several other facets that will tie in, that will make it appear necessary that we have to unite under one leadership plan. Would you agree?
Yep, it's coming.
And I think that's what they're shooting for. And guess what? The alien revelation will be happening somewhat before that 12 years is up. Quote unquote aliens. I don't believe they're aliens. I know they're not. But they're going to say, as we're doing these more live connections to Mars and other areas of space, we're going to see discoveries that are going to be more and more pointing to live biological aliens. And one of these times we may see a face of an alien on one of these. And they said, we don't want to alarm anybody, but we think we have discovered life.
But even when she's talking about these demons, she's talking about this presence, she doesn't sound crazy. I don't believe she sounds crazy. She sounds like somebody who is not enthusiastic, but someone who is intrigued and wants to is someone who's curious. So if they dabble with something and they let something in, if somebody invited something in, that's what I'm worried about. And then all this crazy stuff happens. But the problem there is, why didn't the police use this? They didn't talk about any of this. Now, from what they said, they didn't know about any of the supernatural stuff. But they definitely, when this story first broke, they did not tell us about any reference to Muslims, the whole blood thing. They didn't tell us any of that stuff. So we had no idea that there was written in blood, there's anything written in blood. It was crazy. They tried to hide that. But once it came out, then they couldn't hide it. But I was like, well, why didn't they use that? If they were trying to make David Crowley look crazy, they could have used that to make him look crazy, and I don't understand why they didn't. So it's like a cover-up of a cover-up and more cover-ups, and it's challenged.
It might be a fear thing. They're afraid of what they're dealing with, something they don't understand themselves and can't address.
I can't blame them for that. I mean, it is crazy. Now, David's mom died about 5 to 8 months after that. David's mom died under strange circumstances too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the issue there? Was it considered strange?
We didn't really. Yeah, we couldn't really find out much. It was hard to find out anything. Only family can really find that stuff out, I guess. But it was very, very quiet. All we know is that she died in her home. Suddenly. And I don't know. That to me was odd too, because she was like the only one who was actually raising questions. The only ones who had doubts on record. She did not think that David could do this by himself. And maybe that's where the pack theory started. I don't know. I remember it starting very early on, and it was just the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. But, so the mom dies. We're still trying to find out more. A little bit is leaking through, but we're not getting that much data on it yet. But that was a very strange one, too, because the timing, first of all, was just weird. And the fact that she was one of the only people that was questioning it, and one of the only people who would have had the power to fight it while this case was still open. So I don't know. That's all I know right now. David Crowley.
But the thing about it is, if you've done something and you want to eliminate all questions, you get rid of the people that are around it that are causing trouble or that do know something. And,
right.
The interview had that girl, she knew about the family. She was a friend, and she knew they were pretty close-knit, not a, monster family. They had their problems and arguments. But from what I was listening, I didn't, she seemed to be thinking that this was not, from my perspective, it would be that, no, I don't think David did that. Maybe she didn't present it that way, but in the back of her mind, it seemed like this was strange, that David would kill his daughter, a 5-year-old kid. How do you look at your daughter's head and think, I'm going to shoot her? Daddies and daughters, when you have a daughter, you think of protection. And and I don't see him blowing up after, there was no trigger that I can see or hear based on any evidence that I see. Except maybe if his wife was truly planning to leave him, that could be a trigger if he's unstable. But you said, when there was a demon and a presence and he felt off, he was praying. That solicits a different type of person than a reactionary person, an emotional person. He didn't sound like that. He sounded like one of self-control and discipline anyway, at least in the family issues and the issues of the house. So that lends another mark against the fact that it was a murder-suicide of which he was the murderer.
Right. Yeah, and they were young. They weren't even 30 yet. They were 28, 29. I mean, these were young kids.
Wow, and that and not that murderers can't be from that. We got to understand that even children kill. I mean young children. Evil is not restrained by age, as I have learned. Oh boy, but it based on the stability and the normalcy of that. They had disagreements, they had problems. I don't see where David would want to kill his wife. Now the trigger was if his wife was truly wanting to leave him. Now, from the friend's perspective, I didn't hear that she was talking about it. Was that the truth?
That's some of the rumors, so there's different theories, and it kind of seems like when you follow that rumor back to the source, it does seem like it was all coming from just one source being fed out to different people to make it seem like multiple people thought that there was problems. But when we really look at just the facts and really try to ask people, okay, well, prove it, show us where there was problems, there's just nothing there.
Yeah, because there would have to be somebody that saw them or was aware of difficulties. Generally, a mother or family members would be aware around them of issues, and I don't
Yeah,
get
some of the
that was there.
no, some of the most vocal people were the people that were tied to the Gray State Project that were being cut out. They seem to be the ones who were kind of pushing these weird theories, these weird things, all this stuff to just, and it just really seemed like you would have multiple people saying that David Crowley is guilty, but their theories are different. Their stories don't line up. That doesn't mean that they were killers or anything like that. I'm just saying it's been proven that these people have lied to us. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. It doesn't bode well for their views of the family. And
right. Now, you also have David's brother, because also found, when the bodies were found on the front doorstep, there were Christmas presents found, and there was a $14,000 check from David's dad that was also found there, left by David's brother. Now, first, David's brother said that he was there either on December 26th or December 27th, but he wasn't sure. In the police reports, it clearly states that David's brother was there on December 28th. He dropped off presents. He did not look through the window. He did not knock on the door because him and his brother were having problems. And so he did see the family dog through the window. He left the gifts there. He left the stuff there and then left. And that's it.
Why was it 3 weeks that people worried and went to check on them?
I don't know.
3 weeks. You know, when a couple of days go on, and if you're tighten it enough, you go, well, I wonder if he's okay. I wonder what's going on. And that doesn't make sense that it was 3 weeks. It's like there was something that stalled people or stalled them going there. Was there anybody else involved that may have been giving, blocking messages or anything, indicating that they were okay when they were dead?
Not that we know of. We know that David was working on rewriting his script, and when he does that, he obviously separates himself from people. He had already told his family that he wasn't going to go to their house on Christmas, so nobody was expecting to really see them except for the school where the daughter went. And the school made several calls when the daughter didn't show up, but that was really it. Nobody
and they didn't send anybody over there to talk with the family, obviously.
No, not in the 3 weeks. Now, maybe if 4 weeks had gone by, maybe they would have, but we just know that they were out. I'm not sure when the daughter was supposed to go back to school, but it had to have been sometime in January. The bodies are found on January 17th.
That's way too long for a school not to be involved with the kid missing all of that. That's another strange query. And why didn't they follow up there? If the client, your family is still there, and that's another weird one. Doesn't have any input too much because things go awry. But one of the things that could be part of this is somebody obviously wanted all of the family members dead. Who would be so angry as to want to kill a whole family would be a question that comes to my mind. Who would hate David Crowley so much that they would want to eliminate him completely? Or maybe they were trying to eliminate him and his wife came in, and then that meant get rid of her. Oops, and the daughter saw, oh no, well, we got to take this one out too. It almost, in that regard, comes across again, as I was saying, a type of killing in which eliminate the loose ends.
But why would the Apple Valley police, why would the investigators, I mean, at some level, not saying all of them, because I don't believe all of them are in on it or in on anything, but at some level, if there is a cover-up, they're a big part of this cover-up.